Might want to unmute the mic here first. Let's get started again. Welcome to Dawg Day Afternoon. I am Gilles Gallant with BetsTV. You can follow me on Twitter at GDog5000. We got a special betting show here today where we're going to be talking about NFL, sports betting, maybe give some life wisdom, some unsolicited advice. I know everybody loves that. Maybe give a few picks along the way. I know people love that too. And we're not going to take things too seriously around here. This is meant to be kind of more of a fun, kind of conversational show. And every week we're going to cover the latest odds in the NFL, take you into my thought process and why I think the way I do and what I clearly don't know, which is a lot. And maybe how we can help you kill some time till the next football game, which is Thursday night football between the Giants and Washington professional football team. And I've got a really special guest today. I've got somebody that I think you probably are quite familiar with. It is Joe Osborne of OddsShark, sports betting analyst, my dear friend. Joe, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. I'm a little tired, though, to be honest. I forgot how much these primetime games can take out of you being on the East Coast, right? Like, it's hard to relax when you got a little bit of action on a game, especially a game like last night. Of course, I was on the wrong side, the Ravens, and then it goes into overtime, so you're up late, and then you just can't fall asleep. As you know, I'm a big UFC fan, too, so those fights go really, really late on the Saturday night, so I'm kind of accustomed to it. But it's not like you just say, okay, I'm going to sleep in and take the next day off, you know. Got to pay the bills, right? So
well, especially on the Saturday nights when sometimes some of these cards, they'll have 3 title fights, and the final title fight, the champion isn't walking out to the ring until like 12:30 Eastern, and it could be a 5-round fight, and you're up pretty late trying to recover on Sunday morning. Thankfully, the football endorphins and adrenaline kick us back into high gear Sunday mornings to jump back in. So, Joe, we're going to start a little interesting segment here to start the show. And week one is classic for Hot Take Central, the overreaction. Everybody loves to have a nice little hot take here. And some things are quite apparent to people more than others. Things are apparent to me. And we're going to start a segment here that I like to call Apparently.
Okay.
So hear me out here, and I want to know what your thoughts are. So apparently, the Packers are the worst team in football. They got destroyed in week one. And I don't know how much of this is just rollover from the offseason drama with Aaron Rodgers and how much could actually be attributed to New Orleans defense. But only putting up 3 points on a neutral field game against this team that has been, New Orleans was pretty much written off at the start of the year with Jameis Winston, probably picked. They had minus odds to miss the playoffs. Their win total was around 9 to start the year. Tell me how apparent, how far off base am I with that kind of take?
Well, I think you're pretty far off, to be completely honest. If you want to judge them, if you want to judge teams solely on what you saw in week one, like if you never watched a game of NFL football and you don't know who any of the players are, and you just looked at what happened in game one, you'd probably say, okay, Green Bay or Tennessee or Jacksonville, probably the worst teams in the league. Now, you'll probably have a good case, Jacksonville, full all season long. But I think once everything's said and done, probably Houston Texans will be the worst team this season. Not really going out on a limb with that one. But I think we're going to see the Packers get right back into it. It's kind of funny, some of the takes that came out after that is Rodgers is checked out. And some people, you think Aaron Rodgers might be tanking the season to get the GM fired? I don't know about that. I don't think that's very accurate. But one thing that I do think could be accurate, and maybe this is a hot take, I think the Green Bay Packers have a little bit of quit in them. They quit in that game. We saw them get their butts kicked in Tampa Bay last year. They kind of quit in that game. And then, of course, remember the NFC Championship game a couple years ago against San Francisco.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon, Joe, for the Packers and Aaron Rodgers to put up a road stinker per year. We saw it last year in Tampa, like you had just mentioned, the NFC title game against San Francisco. And we've even seen during a regular season game where they went to San Francisco and just got romped. And now some of that might just be their team was just not as good as the other team. But I'm not quite on that side of that. The Saints are significantly better than the Packers, at this point. So sure. I'm kind of wondering, if maybe we need to RELAX kind of way that Rodgers had brought that up a few years ago when they then went on their run. But for me, when I immediately see this kind of opening loss, you got to get that road stinker out of the way. But they've got a tough schedule, and, they've got a nice little week 2 matchup to be able to bounce back against the Lions. So I think they're going to be able to, they're 10.5-point favorites. They should win that game. But again, if week 2, if they lose that somehow, we need to seriously start considering if this is the season from hell for Green Bay, where they just go off a cliff. Okay. Yeah.
You need some bigger sample sizes to work off of, right? Like
no,
the example that everyone points to is Jacksonville won in week 1 last season, then didn't win another game. They haven't won since, right? So got to keep that in mind.
Yeah. 1 week sample size is all I need to make a full season judgment, Joe. So I think I think we're going to move on here. The next apparent kind of reaction here, and this one's really not too far off base, I don't think. But again, we'll see if this is kind of the hot take model here that we're following. The NFC West apparently could have 4 playoff teams this year, Joe. Every team looked, San Francisco maybe kind of went off a little bit of a track there in the fourth quarter, but every team looked very impressive in week 1. You could say maybe the Cardinals. It's subjective who you think was actually the best team in week 1. Arizona looked really good, but was that Tennessee looking bad, or was that Arizona looking really good? The Rams obviously looked good on Sunday Night Football, kicked the crap out of the Bears. Seattle looked really good offensively, against the Colts. And even like Detroit, even though they were a lesser opponent and they kind of let them back in, San Francisco were thoroughly in charge and dominating that game. Joe, is it off base to think that the NFC West, all 4 teams are going to make the playoffs this year?
No, not at all. I think the team that a lot of people would have pointed to coming into the season as the odd team out would have been the Cardinals. They're a team that I was high on coming into the season. I took the over on their 8.5. Now, that said, I'm still going to pump the brakes a little bit after that win in week 1 versus Tennessee. But what they would need is a team like the Saints, or for some reason the Bucks, to completely fall out of it for 4 teams in the NFC West to make the playoffs, because that would mean the only spots open would be for division winners within the other divisions. I think that is realistic in the NFC East, that only one of those teams makes the playoffs. NFC North, that's probably the case as well. Now, the division you would look at would be the NFC South, where you have the Bucks and the Saints, who both look like playoff contenders after 1 week, to be fair. But yeah, they would need one of those teams to drop out. But yeah, I could see it happening. I'd like to see it happen.
Yeah, I think that all teams, though, probably have to get to at least 10 wins. And I just don't know if that's as easy as possible. Easy, considering they all have to play each other twice, right? Sure. Like, it's very difficult to see that. But again, it's one of those kind of years where, with that extra playoff spots and, having the extra game, I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. If I had to think of an odd team out, it might be San Francisco, just with some of the injuries that we've seen already through week 1 and some of the injuries, that are, they naturally happen just through a course of the season. I'm not wishing injury for anybody, but it's an NFL season. You have to be realistic. And just the whole, whether or not you believe in Jimmy Garoppolo, whether or not they make the transition to Trey Lance fast enough, I'm not really certain. But I think if I had to pick, like, gun to my head, pick a team that's not going to make the playoffs out of this group, it's probably going to be San Francisco, but I don't feel great about it. I wouldn't actually make that an official pick. Now, you brought up the NFC East about only 1 team making the playoffs this year. And the NFC East takes a lot of crap, as being the worst division in football. And, obviously the Eagles, the team that was picked last out of all the division teams, is now the only undefeated team in the division after week 1. But apparently, Joe, the AFC South is now the worst division in football. Like, the Texans are 1-0 in that division, beat up on the Jags. The Titans, I don't know what happened there. I think people were just drinking the Kool-Aid too much with the Julio Jones acquisition. I think people forgot how weak their defense can look in certain games, especially when the game plan doesn't revolve around Derrick Henry. Like, if he's not getting 20-plus carries, like, really, I don't know how the Titans, what the game plan is of how they win a game in that scenario. And then also the Colts, I'm not saying that Carson Wentz and Frank Reich can't really right the ship, but some of those passes yesterday on Sunday reminded me a lot of last year's Eagles Carson Wentz, with some of the indecisiveness and maybe just hanging on to plays a little bit longer. Plus, their offensive line is a little bit battered as well. Is it apparent as it is to me, to you, that the AFC South is maybe the worst division in football?
Yeah, well, one of my hot takes coming into the season was that the AFC South will be this year's version of what the NFC East was last season, meaning, yes, they will be the worst division in all of football. I came in kind of down on Tennessee because they didn't really do a whole lot to improve that defense. Of course, their offensive coordinator left. The offense is very top heavy. Are they going to keep riding Derrick Henry? I'm not high on Julio Jones. He's a big name. If you're playing Madden or fantasy, sure. But just not a team that I believe in. The Jaguars are going to get better because they only have to win 2 games to get better, right? So they'll improve, but they're still not going to be anything very special. The Texans, I think you'll see them as the season goes on just look to unload anyone who proves to be talented because they are in a complete and total rebuild. And kind of like you said, I do not trust Carson Wentz. He really proved to be just an awful decision maker last year with the Eagles. So, yeah, I don't know about the Colts. But, yeah, that division, I don't know. I don't even know who I'd pick to win. Probably the Colts at this point, maybe, just because I'm not high on Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like the Colts defense the best out of all of them. But at the same time, it's such a toss-up for me. I mean, I'm not going to week 1, again, the gun to the head analogy, I would probably take the Colts. But again, the Titans, and I think one of the most egregious lines that I saw from week 1, and I mean, I was all over Texans money line, but it wasn't just because I think the Texans are a good team. It was more along the lines of, what has Jacksonville done to deserve to be a favorite in any instance, especially a road favorite? First game for a coach, first game for a quarterback, going into, I mean, I guess a hostile environment, but either way, playing against a team that still had some decent blue chip players like on the defensive side. To me, that the Jacksonville -3 line to me was the fishiest line. It just, I sniffed that out right away. Thankfully, give myself a little pat on the back, Barry Horowitz style. All right, now, Joe, this one, we're going to go a little bit back to, this is going to be a little bit of a Jets-Panthers angle here. Apparently, the Jets should have kept Sam Darnold. Honestly, I don't know if you got to watch much of that Jets game on Sunday, but my God, Zach Wilson and it might just be the franchise as a whole, Mekhi Becton going down, like that made me sick just to hear about that because I'm a big fan of his from an offensive line standpoint, but Zach Wilson did not look good in that game. I know, obviously, first game, you're playing with the Jets, your second overall pick. But, I mean, would they have just been better off if they had just kept Sam Darnold and maybe taken a more of a higher-end defensive prospect or maybe like a higher-end wide receiver and maybe instead of, say, signing like Corey Davis, for example?
No, I think it was time for a fresh start. Listen, you see the Miami Dolphins helmet there in the background. I lived through the Ryan Tannehill era of his tenure as a Dolphin, and they should have given up on him much earlier. Of course, he goes on to have the best years of his career in Tennessee, so that stings a little bit. But they hung on to the guy for way too long and ended up passing on way too many quarterbacks who've proven out to be franchise guys in the draft, right? So I think it was time just for a complete teardown and rebuild with that Jets organization, with the head coach at the quarterback position. And, of course, Darnold, he looked half decent in a few spots there in that game. But, ironically, the team that made him look pretty good was the Jets' defense, right?
Revenge game, man. Revenge game, him and Robbie Anderson.
There we go. So, yeah, no, it was time for a complete teardown and rebuild. Sam Darnold, at the end of the day, in 3 years from now, do I think he's going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL? Absolutely not. You can only blame so many of his problems on the Jets. There's other quarterbacks who come into this league that have a bad offensive line and they overcome that, or they can overcome poor weapons or poor coaches around them. And he was just brutal. You can you count on one hand how many good games he's had? Probably.
And I think it's also the skill position players too. I mean, let's be real. If we had put Zach Wilson on this Panthers team with McCaffrey and DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, and I mean, every single player that they took in the draft this past year, I believe, was a defensive player. So that team, just top to bottom, just has much better players. I think at this stage, I think obviously week 1 showed that, because in a way, it almost was like the Panthers succeeded in spite of Sam Darnold. You saw in the first half of the game, Darnold maybe struggling a little bit, third down conversions just not being there. And then finally he completes this long bomb to Robbie Anderson, and then they never really looked back after that. I think the Jets maybe got a little score at the latter parts of the game to just make the score look a little closer.
Yeah, I think, I don't even know if Darnold will be starting for them next year. Look at all the guys who are going to be up for grabs. The situation with Deshaun Watson is going to be figured out probably for better or worse. You're going to have Jimmy Garoppolo, who's probably going to be on the market. This is a guy who brought if he could stay healthy, he got San Francisco to the Super Bowl, right?
You just have to be good with one bad pass per game. With Jimmy Garoppolo, one bad pass per game, you know that it's probably going to go over the middle. It's going to get tipped up, probably an interception or just one really bad play where you're like, oh. But yes, you're right. So there are going to be a lot of quarterback, and there's the quarterback market. I almost was kind of making a joke to one of my buddies that I regularly bet with about how, like, you know, the running back situation now where you don't draft the running back high and that running backs are just interchangeable. Is quarterback the new running back in a way, like where you just kind of replace a quarterback every couple of years and you basically will just improve just by somebody else standing there kind of thing?
Well, yeah, these guys don't get as long as they used to. It used to be you draft a guy, he sits on the bench for a year, and then you take time to develop him over a couple of years. And, you know, I'm going through it right now with the Tua experience is his tenure as a Dolphins starting quarterback. You know, people aren't giving him any time at all. People want to move on already. Some people do. I don't. The guy needs more time to develop. You know, he's got the skills. They have a team built around him this year. So let's see how he does. But well, yeah, it is, it's figured out. You got to be good right away. If not, we're going to look to bring someone else in.
We'll save those takes about Tua. We're going to talk about the Dolphins here in a few minutes. But this is my last hot take. I don't really know if it's a hot take. I think some people already on the Talking Heads media probably have already been talking about this all morning on the usuals like Get Up and First Take. But apparently, Lamar Jackson has peaked. I'm not really certain that he's going to get much better as a passer. Accuracy, like, I never look at a quarterback as soon as he comes in the NFL and thinks that accuracy is going to be the best trait. Usually that takes time, it takes effort. But I mean, we're entering year 4 now with Lamar. And obviously he's as fast as ever, as shifty as ever. You saw he had over 80 rushing yards yesterday. I think a lot of people were on his rushing touchdown, rightfully so. There's a reason why he was minus 130 to score yesterday. But as a passer, and I'm not sure if this is more to blame for the Ravens and the development of Lamar, or if it's Lamar, maybe, like, I know that he works a lot and works hard during the off season, but has he peaked as a quarterback from a passing perspective from your perspective?
I don't know if I go that far. You know, I think Lamar, obviously, the older he gets, his athleticism is only going to diminish, but he's still a fairly young man. And the big problem with Lamar Jackson and this team as a whole is that they don't surround him with any type of elite playmakers that can bail him out, that can help him out. I put out the example earlier. Look at Michael Vick during his tenure with the Eagles. He had LaShawn McCoy was one of the best running backs in the NFL during that time. He had Deshaun Jackson in his prime, Jeremy Maclin in his prime, right? But the Ravens, could prove to be a failure of epic proportions that they're not surrounding him with elite playmakers. Now, people came back at me, well, look at all the injuries that they've had, Joe. Okay, sure, but what are we in year 4 of this now? And they're not able to get the guy, you know, even a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL.
It's tough. It's a tough watch, man. You're right. And I mean, I'm not going to say that Hollywood Brown is a bad wide receiver. I'm not going to say that, I mean, I think they had Miles Boykin out there, but like Sammy Watkins, for example, who's only good usually for one big game a year, you know, and
8 games a season.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I don't know how much they were banking on him to be this, this somebody who moves the needle offensively for them. Sure. Like, he had a couple of plays last night, but again, I'm not really sure he's really the type of wide receiver you're looking for, that you could get him in open space and he could just go make a play for you. And that's kind of one of the things that I feel like even if you had J.K. Dobbins there last night, I'm not really certain that would have been enough to push them over the edge in that specific game, or even just the way that the season is going. And I think that's the one thing that I agree with you about, the diminishing athleticism, is that you almost have to improve out of necessity or you're going to be out of the league. And as long as he doesn't take any big hits, but then he starts to slow down, like you kind of see it in the NBA, maybe not to compare him to like Russell Westbrook or, or these guys who just have like elite athleticism.
Yeah.
But as they start to trickle down, you got to start to develop a 3-point shot. You have to maybe be a little bit more careful with the way that you exert yourself. And I think with Lamar, we've seen it now. And he's been pretty good in primetime games during the regular season, but we've seen these times now, like especially in the playoff moments where I don't want to go as far as saying like the hot take, like teams have figured him out, because there's no way that you could figure out athleticism. Like there's no player that you can put on your practice squad that's going to be able to simulate the shiftiness and athleticism of Lamar Jackson. But at the same time, I think that teams have figured him out from a passing perspective, like just from I'm not sure that he is going to, do some of those shifty, like sidearm throws or the way that like Stafford or Mahomes would do. And, not every quarterback is made the same, but at the same time, if you want to succeed long-term in the NFL, you got to have accuracy. And I'm not seeing it from Lamar, and I'm not really certain that it's going to happen.
Yeah, he did look really bad. A couple of those passes, I think there was a period where he had incompletions on 5 consecutive passes, and a couple of those were just god-awful misses. It wasn't like he was throwing way downfield. He was just missing guys, hitting their feet. So, yeah, I don't know if we're going to see him improve as a passer, but that team is doing him a massive disservice by not surrounding him with some, at least, more reliable and consistent playmakers.
Well, my favorite part about this narrative about Lamar is week 2, because you get to host the Chiefs now. And this is one of the probably best retribution style of games that you could have, especially when you hosted them last year. You were 3.5-point favorites, I believe, against the Chiefs, and you lost. The Chiefs won as outright dogs, and it wasn't even close. If the Ravens are able to beat the Chiefs this week, and Lamar is able to at least show a lot more competency from an accuracy standpoint, I really do think that this narrative of that Lamar has peaked, it'll go away at least for a few games. But we're going to now dive into some futures odds. And there's 3 teams that I really want to do a deep dive with you, Joe.
Okay.
And specifically just kind of like a week 1, taking a little, dipping our toe in the water and maybe seeing if whether or not it's warm enough to bite on some of these futures markets. So the first team we're going to look at is the New Orleans Saints. Joe, we got to talk about your boy Jameis Winston here, and I know that obviously you were all in on him maybe taking a big step back here, but the Saints to win Super Bowl 25-1, Jameis to win MVP is around 25-26-1. Comeback Player of the Year is down to plus 500, and then of course this one's very special and dear to my heart. Sean Payton for NFL Coach of the Year now down to 15-1. That opened to 25-1. If you were being asked to make a bet with one of your hard-earned units on one of these 4 futures, do any of these entice you?
Probably Sean Payton, Coach of the Year, would be the one that I would target, I guess, because the Saints have it in them to be a damn good regular season team, but I don't like them to win the Super Bowl with Jameis. And with Payton, he hasn't been good in the playoffs either. Everyone wanted to throw Drew Brees under the bus when they got to the playoffs, and, they had a bad sequence or whatever. They didn't show up in the fourth quarter. But Sean Payton has been pretty bad in the playoffs too. That said, he's proven more than capable of being great in the regular season. So 15-1, that's pretty good. Now, coming into the season, I absolutely killed the Saints, and I killed Jameis, saying he's one of the worst decision makers in NFL history. He had been coming into this season.
30-30, bro.
But hey, man, all the credit in the world. They had a lot of stuff going against them in that game, completely displaced out of New Orleans, and they need to move the home game to Jacksonville, of course, and they were an underdog in that game going up against a pretty damn good team in the Packers, and they came out and they put their foot on the gas. They kept their foot on the gas, and they just completely obliterated them. Jameis, that's probably the best game he's ever had in his career, right? So, yeah. All the credit in the world for that. But, I got to see it to believe it. Let's see how Jameis does, when we get into December here against a good opponent and colder weather maybe. Let's see how you do then. But, the Saints made me look really bad in week 1, 100%. I got to own that one.
I can't imagine you're alone on that, though, Joe, because, again, when the game was moved to Jacksonville and the fact that, the line was around 3.5 to 4, depending on the book. Like a lot of people, I'm pretty sure from a survivor pool standpoint, the Packers were one of the top picks as well just this week. And the one reason why I was really high on Sean Payton for Coach of the Year at the start of the year was mainly just because of the narrative of the Saints of bringing Jameis in. The one thing as well with just not only Jameis, but the fact that they were basically being written off to make the playoffs, their win totals, like they had won double digits like 3 straight years in the standings as well. The one thing I wanted to bring up about Drew Brees, like last year, Drew Brees missed 4 games. They went 3-1 in those games. The year before, he had missed 6 games. And remember, Teddy Bridgewater was in for them. They pretty much won nearly all of those games. And I think that was the one thing that people were maybe mentioning to me a lot when I was bringing up Peyton for Coach of the Year, is they were hanging still on the Drew Brees narrative of that, of how much of an impact he made to the team. Now, I'm not saying that Drew Brees, like I'm not trying to demerit like a Hall of Famer's career, but I think we all had eyes and we saw, especially during that playoff game last year, like he cost them that playoff game, in my opinion, more so than Sean Payton did, just with some of those interceptions. And I guess that's kind of why I still think Sean Payton is still pretty good value at 15-1 for Coach of the Year. And honestly, I feel like if he is able to rehab Jameis's image to the point where Jameis is now like a top 3 MVP candidate or whatever else, like forget about Coach of the Year. I mean, you could rename the Coach of the Year after Sean Payton if he's able to accomplish that. I mean, give him a Nobel Prize, Peace Prize. What else? Mark Twain Prize for humor. Those kinds of things. Like just put him somewhere on a Mount Rushmore of incredible jobs. I'm not quite going to be going all in on the Jameis for MVP. Comeback Player of the Year, I still have my own thoughts. We could talk about that in a little bit. But Saints to win the Super Bowl at 25-1, not incredible, but at the same time, for a team that has shown, and they have blue chippers all over the place, although Lattimore going down just recently, being out a few weeks, that obviously is going to sting a little bit. We're going to move on to another team now, Joe, and this team is near and dear to your heart. Probably had the second best win of week 1, in my opinion, and that's the Miami Dolphins. Now, Miami Dolphins to win the Super Bowl, sitting there at 40-1 right now, Joe. Tua Tagovailoa, NFL MVP, 80-1. Not sure how much we're going to probably go into that one, but again, at the same time, not worth maybe diving in too far. But the other one I wanted to talk about though is Brian Flores for NFL Coach of the Year at 16-1, and the Dolphins to win the AFC East at plus 275. I really think that the Dolphins can win this division this year. And, we're going to see here in week 2 when they're hosting the Bills as home dogs. And I want to know, Joe, do you think that the Dolphins can win this game? Or do you think maybe we should maybe be looking past this game and that maybe we could consider them to win the AFC East over a team like the Bills?
Well, I absolutely think they can win this game. The Bills came out pretty flat there in week 1, and Miami's been pretty good at home over the past couple seasons anyways. I know they covered the spread in 6 straight games at home, and they're typically pretty good in divisional games. So, yeah, I think that they can win this game. I like them to cover the spread, especially with it at 3.5, how you can get that hook. I'm a big teaser guy too, so Miami on a teaser I think will be a pretty good selection there.
Tease them the other way through 0. -3.
Well, if you wanted to, but the Flores Coach of the Year one at 16-1, that's not bad. Now, Flores, he was right in the mix, right up until the last game of the regular season where it was a must-win game. Of course, you remember they going into Buffalo to take on Matt Barkley and the boys and the backups, essentially, and it was Miami. If you win, I think I don't know if it was a win and you get into the playoffs.
Might have needed some help from other teams too. But.
Yeah, it was one of those situations, and they just completely no-showed, and they got their asses kicked, right? And so a lot of that was on the coaching staff, so you couldn't give Flores the award based on that. But yeah, I do believe he is one of the best coaches in the league, and I do think he can be in the mix there at 16-1. Going back to the week 1 win over the Patriots, some people are discrediting Miami and everyone wants to give Mac Jones a big pat on the back. And sure, he played good, but you got to give Miami credit too. They were an underdog on the road. It was an ugly win. They played better defense. They played great defense in the red zone. They created those turnovers, right? They punched those balls out. So I'll give Miami credit. I'll take an ugly win as an underdog on the road 100 times out of 100. You know what I mean? So I think...
Yeah.
I think Miami's going to be in the mix. Super Bowl, I think that's unrealistic. So I wouldn't put my money on that. But, week to week betting standpoint, the Miami Dolphins, I think they're going to be profitable again. I think that they were the second best teaser bet last season too, by the way, if you like betting teasers. So something to keep in mind with the team that could be undervalued here the first couple of weeks of the season.
If you're looking for a real long shot, especially because he rushed for a touchdown in week 1, Tua for NFL Offensive Player of the Year, 250 to 1. He's on a 16 touchdown rushing pace right now, Joe. So if he's able to pull that off, we can't really sleep on it as well. So,
yeah, he did have one play that was a complete and total disaster there, that interception. That was really, really ugly. But, he was fairly efficient, with the playbook designed mainly around him against what most people are calling one of the best defenses in the league coming into the season. So, he was above average, kind of fits the narrative of what he's been so far in his career, which is a bit underwhelming. But like I said, we got to give the kid a little bit more time here, right, to play with the new weapons he has. And we'll see how he looks at the mid-season point, I guess.
Yeah, and I, much like your graciously admitting how wrong you were about the Packers in week 1, I was totally wrong about the Dolphins in week 1. I was all over Patriots -2.5. And I thought I got the best line because it was up to about 3.5, probably by kickoff. We saw this exact week 1 matchup. Mind you, it was Ryan Fitzpatrick and Cam starting in week 1. And even though the final score is probably within 10 points, anybody who remembers that game was pretty much a Patriots blowout at that point. So especially with the Dolphins going into New England, I thought that might have been very difficult to be able to take them down. And I mean, the Patriots had their chances to win it. So obviously I was wrong, but I'm not going to kill myself or kick myself in the head over a loss like that at this point.
Hey, man, one last note on that. Tua is 2-0 versus Bill Belichick. So take that. Use that information as you will.
Yeah, another big F you to Nick Saban. All right. We're going to move now to a team that is dear to my heart. I'm actually representing this team. You're probably going to see a lot of Cowboys apparel anytime I'm on the air for BetsTV. The Dallas Cowboys Futures taking a little bit of a moral victory, I guess, in week 1 by losing on a field goal to the Buccaneers. 35 to 1 to win the Super Bowl, Joe. Dak Prescott, NFL MVP at 18 to 1. Prescott as well. He's the favorite for comeback player of the year at +150. And then, of course, the Cowboys to win the NFC East at +125. I think they're just slight underdogs behind the Eagles at this stage. Do any of these 4 bets entice you to want to go drop a hard-earned unit on it?
Maybe the Dak one, because I think Dak is going to put up some big numbers all season long. Not great value, though. That's very good. +125, very close to even money. So, and who knows with his health, too. So very risky. But no, people call me a Cowboys hater, but I try to call it as I see it, right? Like a lot of Cowboys fans taking the moral victory lap, and a lot of people, the main thing they point to for the Cowboys loss was that non-call at the end. But the Cowboys, they got a lot of breaks in that game. The Bucs secondary got completely decimated. As you remember, I can't even think of the guy's name. One of the backups needed to lead the game.
Bunting.
Yeah, 100%. And then, those turnovers by the Bucs doesn't get much more backbreaking. Consecutive possessions, they lose a ball in their own end. That leads to 9 points for the Cowboys. And then the one with Godwin, it looked like he was on his way to a touchdown. He fumbles it inside the 5-yard line. That's a change, a turnaround of potentially 16 points right there. So I like the Chargers quite a bit coming into this week 2 game. The Chargers now on the up, they needed to overcome quite a bit in that game versus Washington.
They did.
First
they looked
coach
really good.
Traveling across the country. They had some bad breaks. Of course, that fumble into the end zone, the worst rule in all of sports, went against them. But yeah, I'm not very high on the Cowboys. I think their offense is incredible. Fantastic from a fantasy perspective, very fun from a prop betting perspective. But I think the defense absolutely stinks.
Yeah. And that's always been the case. Like, look, I am a Cowboys fan. I'm not even going to, but I am the pragmatic one. I'm the Cowboys fan that you talk to that is the glass half empty type of guy who is just constantly, I'm the jaded one, waiting for the bad thing to happen and waiting for the kick in the face. And I was even tweeting about it, live tweeting. I was like, here we go. Brady's just going to walk it down the field on us right now. And of course he did. The one thing I will counter with, though, about the breaks, and obviously Cowboys got some breaks, but Bucs got some breaks too. There's no Zach Martin in this game. Greg Zuerlein just completely might as well have just you cut him right there. There's 4 points that we gave up, in that instance. I think the breaks were pretty even. So I would just kind of counter with that. But I'm not going to say that the Cowboys didn't get some breaks too. Joe, we talk a lot of crap, just about teams and whatever, talk a lot of crap on Twitter. And, sometimes, we like to crack jokes. Like you're one of my favorite follows for that, just because you'll kind of maybe crack some observations about this, about that. And it has nothing to do with sports a lot of the time. And I wanted to know if this is a gambling Twitter thing or just a Twitter in general thing. And I wanted to know, Joe, why do people in gambling Twitter take things we say so seriously? Like every comment that we make is taken like as gospel or truth. Even if it's just a take about a team, a take about, whether somebody holds the door for you when you go to a grocery store. Like, I'm just wondering, like, what's your thoughts on that? And like, just, with the amount of followers that you have and just the amount of comments and engagement that you get, why do you think that is?
I think it's just online behavior in general, just because there's no accountability whatsoever. Like if I say something that someone disagrees with, just like a general sports take, you have people absolutely just come at you and try to tear your head off. Now, if that happens face to face, you might have a little bit of awkward indifference, perhaps, or
more civil conversation,
debate, point, counterpoint type of thing. But people just come at you and they call you names and they tell you off, and you're like, what is going on here? So in my experience, I was kind of taken aback by that type of behavior when I first started to get into this industry and post stuff on Twitter. But now, for the most part, I just completely ignore it. Like what I always say to people is no one in the history of Twitter has ever won an argument. And what I mean by that is that you're not going to go back and forth with someone and they say, okay, I understand your point. I'm wrong. You're right. I concede. You win. That's never happened. Don't waste your time arguing on Twitter. Maybe you have a lot of free time and some time to kill, but not quite my cup of tea.
Oh, especially like I find the people that I try to avoid on Twitter, especially from a conversation standpoint, is say I just got done making a comment or an observation about how the Eagles have looked, in their game or whatever. And it might be a little negative. Anytime that a guy comments or a girl comments on my post and it's like Eagles fan 6, 7, 8, 10, you suck or whatever. And they have like an Eagles, wallpaper for their bio and a picture of Jalen Hurts as their profile picture or whatever. It's really difficult to kind of take that conversation seriously. But at the same time, those people are very plugged in and those people are very passionate about their team. So I'm not going to fully just say that I don't think that they should comment, but I just think that sometimes I wish people understood that we're just trying to have some fun. It's just like, we don't have to take Twitter and life and gambling and and just stop taking things so seriously.
I think some of it, some of it spills over from the politics stuff. There's a great deal of divide there, and there's no gray area in any realm of life anymore for people. It's you got to pick a side, and if you're on this side, you got to, go all in against the other side. And bringing it back to sports, though, if you have, the most annoying debate of all time in the history of the internet is LeBron versus Jordan. And if you're on one side, you believe the other side sucks. There's people out there who literally think LeBron James sucks.
So I'm on the Jordan side. Jordan is but just because I have Michael Jordan as my favorite player, like, I'm not saying that LeBron isn't still third best all time, like, which is like, to me, like, again, still a pretty decent accomplishment. And he's not even done yet. Like, he could win another title and maybe he usurps MJ again, just a lot of the time. I think it's hot take culture. And if anything, we're probably perpetuating that even more just with some of the shows, some of the apparently perspectives I'm bringing here. Now, Joe, I don't think a lot of people know this about my time starting, in the sports betting industry, and knowing that I actually started with OddsShark, and you actually gave me my first big break. And I get a lot of messages from people asking me like, how do I break into the industry? How do, can I work with you? Can you get me a job? And I want to know from your perspective, what's the best pitch you ever heard on why someone should work at OddsShark?
What's the best pitch I've ever heard? Well, you have people and you're like, hey man, I went 8-0 with my picks this weekend. Are you guys hiring? You get stuff like that from time to time, and that's not you're not going to hire someone based off that, because there's a lot more that goes into it than just picking games. You have to be a respectable person with a reliable work history and things like that.
Be able to create any form of content, maybe be able to write, present yourself on camera. Those aren't requirements, but again, if you're looking for kind of that higher ability, or looking for some of these companies with some of these larger brands that are looking for contributors, those are the kinds of things they're looking for. Well,
you have to have proof that you can do it. All of my friends know a lot about sports, probably some more than I do. Right. But you can't just walk in and say, hey, man, I've won my fantasy league 3 out of 4 years. You have to have proof. And what I mean by that is, before I got into this, I had a blog that you probably remember that not a lot of people read, probably just my friends. And I would post it on my own personal Facebook account. And at the end, not a lot of people read it, but I ended up having an interview with OddsShark many years later. And I just said, here's a work example of 100 different things I've written about sports. And they could look at them. They can say, okay, this guy knows his stuff and he knows how to write. There we go. That's a pretty good work experience right there. So you got to work for free. In some cases, ESPN's not going to hit you up because you have interesting takes on your Twitter account, or because you had a good week in DFS. You have to have proof. There's a lot of people out there, they're podcasting, they got blogs. That's kind of what the tips that I always give to younger people who are looking to break in.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing too is I was actually going to say the best pitch I ever heard, or I was just going to say the best pitch I've ever done was I just went right up to you and said, Joe, I know a lot about sports. I'm one of your good friends. Hire me. And even then you were like, no, like I need to see writing samples. I need to, can you shoot a little video for us? Can you do, there's still some process and things that I had to do. And even then it wasn't like, okay, you're hired. It was like, okay, we'll bring you on a trial basis, that kind of thing. And that's the one thing that I'm trying to explain to people that a lot of the time that I work with I want everybody to succeed. I want everybody, if you really are genuinely interested in creating content and being part of the space, is that to be patient and to just keep practicing and keep getting reps, because that's what's going to make you better. I mean, already like, I don't do a ton of hosting and video shows, but I already know that, 10 weeks down the road, I'm going to be better at the show because I've gotten more reps and more time being able to be on camera. And I think that's the one thing that I think that people need to kind of realize here. Now, Joe,
you need reps. I used to get really nervous before going on, even like 4 years ago when I first started doing more and more stuff with OddsShark. Never like a big radio interview. My heart would just be jumping. And then you just get, the more you do it, like anything, you get more comfortable and more relaxed with it. So yeah, you need reps, you need practice, and you got to work for free to get those reps in some cases.
Absolutely. And getting comfortable in your own skin as well. And part of that is either just not worrying about what other people think, but also just not overthinking like, oh, do I sound good? That kind of thing. Like, you are who you are. Like, you can't really change it too much at this stage, and to just own it. So now, Joe, we're going to move over to week 2 quickly. Just a quick look ahead. Some of these games that caught my eye, I just wanted to know your thoughts on these 4 games. I'm all looking at them because of specifically the money line underdog in this scenario. Cowboys, Chargers, Bills, Dolphins, Bengals, Bears, Chiefs, Ravens. Now, the Cowboys, Dolphins, Bengals, and Ravens are the underdogs in this perspective. Of these 4, is there one that you would put your money on for a money line bet?
So repeat them again. The Dolphins?
We got the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Bengals going on the road to play the Bears. And then the Ravens hosting the Chiefs.
Probably the Bengals. I mean, they're a 3-point underdog on the road going up against Dandy Andy. And they showed us, the Trey Lance coming in, or Trey Lance, or sorry,
Joe Burrow.
Yeah, 100%. Burrow, he's been pretty good in the 10 games that he's played. I posted earlier on Twitter. They are in the 10 full games that he's played. They are 7-2-1 against the spread. And this is make or break season for their head coach too in Cincinnati. So maybe that is one of those teams that can take the next jump, right? And maybe they can ride Joe Burrow to get there. So I'd probably go with them or the Dolphins. The Bills, they surprised a lot of people. I know it's only one game, and maybe, that's...
And it might be the Steelers, too. The Steelers might be better than we thought as well. I think a lot of people wrote them off coming into that game.
Yeah, so Bengals would be first in the power rankings. And like I said earlier, though, I do like the Chargers to cover the spread in that game versus Dallas.
Yeah, so I was kind of leading you into that question because I wanted to talk about the Bengals, and I thought that they were the best money line position in this spot just because of if we're going to see Andy Dalton again in week 1, give me the Bengals. If we're going to see Justin Fields, I might be a little actually hesitant in that because I actually think Justin Fields might be able to be just kind of this X factor of running the football that Andy can't provide. So of those 4, Bengals money line would probably be the one that I would go. Now, Joe, this is the final segment of the show. We're going to do a little rapid fire Q&A. We've got about 7 to 8 questions here.
Okay.
We don't really have to go too deep into it. Just kind of give me yes, no, if you want to go deep into it, we will, but we're going to try to wrap this up quick. So,
okay.
All right. AFC North, Browns, Ravens, Steelers. Who's winning the division?
Browns.
Friend rankings. During your debut with the friend rankings way back on OddsShark on Guys and Bets, I had ranked first, and I slowly dropped in the rankings every week as the weeks went on. Am I still at least in the top 5?
Oh, yeah, we'll keep you in the top 5 based primarily on longevity because we've been friends for a long time. So
top 5 placeholder. I got it.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. F, marry, kill. So I'm going to give you 3 people, and you have to decide if you F them, marry them, or kill them. You ready?
All right.
First one is someone who thinks the Dolphins as a franchise are overrated. Second one is someone who looks in the back of the fridge to get the milk with the longer expiration date at the grocery store. And the third one, someone who offers a 6-foot sub as the main course at a football party.
Well, the 6-foot sub person is a person that I kill. The person that I marry is the person who's checking the expiration dates on the milk and the food products at the grocery store. And I guess the person that I'd have to F is the person who would be against me on the Dolphins.
Well, I guess it's going to be a rough few minutes after that then. All right, now, true or false, Dak Prescott will finish the 2021 season as the NFL passing yards leader.
False.
Right now, he's first. Obviously, he threw over 400 yards against Tampa. And you see that defense, they're going to probably have to throw a lot. I think he probably finishes top 3, but again, I'm probably with you there. I'm going on false. Joe, true or false? Chandler Parsons of the Arizona Cardinals will break the single season sack record. He had 5 sacks in week 1 against the Titans.
Ooh, get good head start, but he does need a lot to go in his way, including health. So I will say false.
Okay. Thursday nighter, Giants versus Washington. Football team is -3. Which side are we taking here?
I'm leaning towards the Giants here at +3 in this situation. They've been pretty good on the road. They played Washington really well last season, and I think that they can improve. Yeah, there's only one way they can go from their week 1 performance, and that's up. So I think we'll see a little bit of improvement there. And maybe I was a little bit disappointed in Washington there in their week 1 performance, even though Fitzpatrick went out. Heineke came in, and he looked pretty good in relief, and they still couldn't get the job done. So I will lean for the Giants to cover the spread in what should be a field goal game.
And a fun fact about Daniel Jones and the Giants, Joe, Daniel Jones is 4-0 against Washington in his career so far. And they're 3-1 against the spread in those games. I was probably going to be looking at a Taylor Heineke rushing touchdown right now. He's at +300, I think, at DraftKings is what I've seen. That's way too low. He did rush for a touchdown when he played against Tampa last year in the playoffs, but I got him at +1,000. I'm not going to take it at +300. All right, next question. If someone offered you 10,000 to 1 odds for the Chiefs to miss the playoffs and you had to bet a full unit, would you take that bet?
Yes.
At 10,000 to 1.
If Patrick Mahomes gets injured, These things happen all the time. Tom Brady got injured early in the season back when when the Patriots were, when was that? In
2008.
Yeah. He went down early against, ironically, the Kansas City Chiefs. But yeah, if he gets injured and has a bad injury, and you would never want that to happen because you're not a bad person. But 100% I would take that.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the Kevin Malone, The Office analogy. If anybody offers you 10,000 or 10,000 to 1 odds on anything, you take it. Obviously, I think that is really the only circumstance that the Chiefs would miss the playoffs. And even then, their backup quarterback situation, they would probably win close to double-digit games just because of how many skill position players they have on the team. Now, Joe, final question. Mm-hmm. You talk about this a lot on Twitter about guff. And I wanted to know, what's the best way not to take any guff?
Is to just not care. Don't let somebody else's bad day become yours. Don't let somebody else's bad attitude interfere with you and make you angry. Just completely dismiss them. If someone's giving you unwarranted guff, just completely dismiss them and let that guff be their guff. Let them carry on with their bad day and you carry on with your good day.
I love the guff analogy. Like to me, it's one of my favorite. Like I've been teaching my kids to say, it's like, don't give me any guff. And probably I'm going to get in trouble at some point from my daycare teachers at some point.
You know where I got that expression?
No, where did you get it?
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the movie when they're checking into the hotel. Johnny Depp's character tells Doctor or the other guy, he said, "Don't take any guff from these swine," when they were checking into the hotel. So yeah, that's where I got that from.
Well, we're gonna end on that, Joe. Now, before we go, Joe, can you tell the folks at home, people who are watching, how they can find your work and what you got going on over at OddsShark this year?
Yeah, every single day, Monday through Friday, I do a video with my best bets of the day. So right now I'm covering Major League Baseball and obviously the NFL. NBA's not too far away, a little bit of NHL hockey as well. But every day, Monday through Friday, hit up the OddsShark YouTube channel. It's pretty easy to find. Just search for OddsShark. And everything is filtered through my Twitter feed as well. So JTFOZ. Is my Twitter handle, so you can find everything there. I'm always tweeting out my picks and interesting trends and stats and foolish observations that I have. And I try not to take things too seriously, guys. Sometimes people forget that the sports thing is supposed to be fun, so I like to look at things from the entertainment side of things and have a little bit of fun and try to win some money along the way.
Well, you joined the right show because, again, I said that off the top. We are not taking things too seriously around here. I think that's the one thing is we need to maybe take it back a notch here, especially over the last couple of years. Everybody's been through a lot, and I think we just need to just pump the brakes on being so anxious and hypertensive. I know some people, they can't help it, but at the same time, let's just have a little more fun with it. So that's all for me. Joe, thank you again for joining me, man. I haven't seen you in a while, and it's really good to see you again. All my writing content is over at FTM Bets, and you can catch me every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern for Touchdown Town on BetsTV. I'll give my best touchdown scores of the week. Thank you for watching Dawg Day Afternoon. I'm Gilles Gallant with BetsTV. Bon chance.